From the mind behind Twitter and Square comes a wellness app that's all about the sun.
Meet Sunday, Jack Dorsey's latest venture. Not a social network, not a payment app, but a daily guide to healthy sun habits.
Can sunlight really change your mood, energy, and health? Let's find out what Jack's vision really means.
There's something undeniably primal about our pull to the sun, isn't there? That warmth on your skin, the lift in your mood. It feels inherently good. Yet there's this growing whisper and sometimes a shout about UV rays and sunburn and skin cancer. It's this modern paradox we're all kind of navigating. We crave the sun's benefits, but we're also, increasingly aware of its hidden dangers.
It's a truly ancient relationship, yeah, but one we're only now beginning to precisely sort of quantify.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe even control. This deep dive is all about navigating that scientific dance between our bodies and the sun. We want to uncover the surprising health implications and look at how cutting-edge technology is attempting to give us precise command over something as primal as sunlight. Our mission today really is to distill the complex science, give you a clear, actionable path to understanding the sun's incredible power, its hidden dangers, and maybe how to forge a much healthier, smarter relationship with it.
Okay, so how are people actually starting to quantify and control this? You mentioned tech. Well, there's some big news bubbling in the tech world right now. Jack Dorsey, co-founder of Twitter, CEO of Block, he's just launched his latest venture. It's called the Sunday app that's just dropped this July. And it's not just some random app, apparently. For Dorsey, it sounds like it's a personal mission to, better understand the relationship between sun exposure and health.
Yeah, and what's fascinating here is how it works, how it operates. The Sunday app uses your real-time location to track the current UV index, the baseline. But it doesn't stop there. It integrates critical details like cloud cover percentage, even sunrise and sunset times. It tries to give you a much more complete picture. It's kind of like giving you a truly personalized weather forecast, but for your skin.
Okay, so the app calculates these times based on location and weather. But what role does personalization really play here? How critical is it that you, the user, input details like your skin type?
Using the Fitzpatrick scale, right?
Yeah.
And even accounting for clothing. Does it really make that much of a difference to the app's calculation?
No, it makes a massive difference. Absolutely. Think of it like this. Your skin type from I to V on that Fitzpatrick scale, and even what you're wearing, that fundamentally changes how UV interacts with your body. These details are vital because they directly impact how much UV you're actually absorbing. So based on all of this data, location, weather, your inputs, the app then calculates your safe sun exposure times before your skin might burn, and it estimates the amount of vitamin D you're producing, both per session and as a daily total measured in international units, IUO. That manual input is really essential for any kind of accuracy, right? And looking ahead, the app has some ambitious plans, I hear. Future improvements are supposed to include more precise calculations based on height and weight factors, seasonal adjustments, and even the integration of actual vitamin D blood test results.
Yeah.
Wow, that could be a real game changer for really tailoring the experience.
Absolutely. The goal is clearly to make it as precise and relevant to the individual as possible.
What's really interesting, though, maybe even more than what the app does, is the unique philosophy it's built on. Dorsey used this generative AI coding tool from Block called Goose. And this wasn't just any AI. Apparently, he chose Goose for its anti-hype ethos, meaning it prioritizes quiet, decentralized privacy, first tools over the flashy, data-hungry ones we see everywhere else. The crucial takeaway for you, the user, is that this translates into an app designed for your privacy and control. No user accounts, no ads, and no tracking. That's pretty rare these days. It seems to reflect Dorsey's broader vision for, digital sovereignty and these minimalist open source utilities.
And it's not an isolated move for him either. Sunday is actually Dorsey's second such minimalist app release. Just this July, it followed BitChat, which is a Bluetooth mesh messaging app he also launched. The common threads are really striking when you look at them together. Both are open source. They feature minimalist user interfaces. They prioritize digital sovereignty. And crucially, like you said, no user accounts, no ads, no tracking. It really raises an important question for all of us, doesn't it? What does this whole approach mean for the future of personal wellness tools? Is this the direction we're headed, where privacy and user control become paramount over, say, data monetization?
That's a really thought-provoking question about the future of tech and privacy too. But it also leads us directly back to the foundational reason we're even having this conversation about sun exposure in the first place. Vitamin D synthesis. It's far more than just a vitamin, isn't it?
Indeed it is. You're right. Vitamin D is actually a hormone, and it's primarily generated in the skin upon exposure to ultraviolet or UV light. Now, while you can ingest it through diet or supplements, over 80% of all the vitamin D we need comes from our own bodies making it. It's like we have this internal vitamin D factory that kicks into gear when sunlight hits our skin.
So how does our body become this amazing vitamin D factory? What's the actual process?
Well, it starts when UVD radiation, specifically UVB, hits your skin. It activates a specific precursor molecule, let's call it 7-DHC for simplicity, that's just sitting there waiting. UVB converts that 7-DHC into vitamin D3. This D3 then travels and undergoes transformations, first in the liver and then in the kidneys, to become its fully active form. And when your doctor checks your vitamin D levels, they're typically looking at something called 25-hydroxyvitamin D or 25-OHD. That's the main storage form, and it accurately reflects your body's overall vitamin D status.
Wow, that biological process is truly intricate. It really highlights how much goes on just beneath the surface when we step outside. Now, it's clearly not a one-size-fits-all process, is it? What kind of factors influence how much vitamin D we actually produce?
Absolutely not. It varies hugely. First, there's location. Seriously. Your latitude and the season dramatically influence UVB availability. For example, in places like Boston from roughly November to February, there's just insufficient UVB radiation reaching the ground for synthesis to occur efficiently. This is often called a vitamin D winter. So just being outside might not be enough for months on end in certain regions, even on a sunny day.
That makes total sense. And then there are those skin-deep differences you hear about. How does skin color, for instance, factor into this?
Right. Think of melanin, the pigment that gives skin its color, as your body's built-in SPF. It's a powerful natural shield. This means darker skin, categorized higher on the Fitzpatrick scale, needs far more UV exposure, sometimes hours more actually, just to produce the same amount of vitamin D as lighter skin. This is because melanin, while fantastic at protecting against sun damage, also acts as a natural UV filter, slowing down that vitamin D production process.
That's really counterintuitive for me. I feel like I've always heard we need massive amounts of exposed skin, like full body exposure, to get adequate vitamin D. Is that a common misconception, or is there a surprising truth there?
It's a very common misconception. Here's a surprising fact for you. Only a small amount of exposed skin is actually needed to produce adequate vitamin D. I'm talking maybe just your hands, face, and arms. That's roughly only 5% of your total body surface area, so you don't need to be in a swimsuit necessarily. Lastly, aging also plays a role. Unfortunately, the elderly are less efficient at synthesizing vitamin D in their skin, which is why deficiency is a particular concern for that population group.
Okay, we've laid out the science of how our bodies make vitamin D, the factors involved, even the future of tracking it. But let's step back for a second and remember why we even chase that sunshine in the first place. Are these bright side health benefits that make this whole balancing act so crucial? We know it's critical for bone health, right? Historically, it eradicated diseases like rickets through milk fortification. That was huge.
Yes, absolutely foundational for bone health. It enhances calcium, magnesium, and phosphate absorption. That's key. But its benefits extend far, far beyond just bones. Vitamin D deficiency, or hypovitaminosis D, as it's technically called, has numerous deleterious effects. That means it's linked to increased morbidity, more illness, and chronic diseases. And it's actually alarming to see its reemergence as a public health issue, particularly among non-Caucasian children. Levels below 16 nanomoles per liter, NMOL, significantly increase morbidity and mortality risk. It's a serious sign.
That's a profound impact. Wow. What about its role in disease prevention or even prognosis once someone has a disease?
Well, the research is really growing here. Vitamin D is associated with protection against various cancers, including melanoma, interestingly enough. Some studies have actually shown that higher 25D levels, your blood levels, are correlated with a better prognosis for malignant melanoma. Then there's cardiovascular health. There seems to be an inverse relationship between vitamin D levels and cardiovascular events, like heart attacks and also blood pressure incidents. Some research even suggests that having low vitamin D can carry a similar risk level to smoking.
Wow. Equating it to the risk of smoking. That comparison is incredibly powerful.
It truly is. It underscores how vital it might be. Vitamin D also positively regulates the immune system and stimulates antimicrobial activity, so helping fight infections. And there are potential roles in reducing the risk of type 1 diabetes, as well as an inverse correlation with the severity of eczema symptoms. The more we learn, the more vital we realize this hormone is for overall health.
Okay, so with all these absolutely crucial benefits, what's considered optimal vitamin D? Is there a magic number we should all be aiming for, or is it more of a spectrum?
That's the million-dollar question, and there's still ongoing debate in the medical community. There isn't one perfect number agreed upon by everyone. But here's an intriguing comparison. Lifeguards, who obviously get a lot of sun exposure, average around 161 nanomole in studies. The general population, meanwhile, averages around 68.3 nanomole. Big difference. Broadly speaking, doctors typically consider you sufficient if your blood levels are above 30 nanograms per milliliter, ng/ml, the different units there. ng/ml is common in the US, and you're generally considered deficient if they drop below 12 ml. It's definitely a spectrum, and where you fall on it has real health implications.
Okay, so we've covered the bright side, the really compelling reasons to care about vitamin D. Now we have to talk about the shadow side, the significant risks of UV exposure. The dark truths of sunlight are pretty stark too, aren't they?
They certainly are. We can't ignore them. Skin cancer is the most common cancer globally, full stop. Here in the US, 1 in 5 Americans will develop it in their lifetime. That's huge. And unprotected exposure is, without question, the most preventable risk factor.
And melanoma is the one everyone fears the most, right? It causes the most deaths from skin cancer.
Absolutely. It's the most serious form, causing over 75% of skin cancer deaths. And what's perhaps surprising and concerning is that it's quite common among adolescents and young adults. We're talking ages 15 to 29. Childhood sunburns, especially severe ones, are a key risk factor here. What happens early matters. Then you have the non-melanoma skin cancers. Basal cell carcinomas are the most common, usually slow-growing, and squamous cell carcinomas, which can spread if they're left untreated. It's still serious.
And beyond skin cancer itself, what other damage can UV exposure inflict on our bodies over time?
Well, premature aging is a big one, the visible signs we often just attribute to getting older. Up to 90% of those changes, things like thick, wrinkled, leathery skin, and also those rough, scaly patches called actinic keratoses. Those aren't just cosmetic. They're actually pre-malignant growths, a warning sign. Almost all of that is caused by sun exposure over the years. It's not just vanity. UV radiation also significantly increases the likelihood of cataracts, which is a leading cause of blindness if untreated, and other eye issues too, like pterygium, or surfer's eye, and macular degeneration.
So the damage isn't just cosmetic, or even just skin-deep cancer, like you said. It goes much further, affecting our eyes, things we might not even connect directly to sun exposure.
Precisely. And perhaps less commonly known, overexposure can also suppress the body's immune system. It can weaken our natural defenses, making it harder to fight off infections and maybe even some cancers. This is a critical point that often gets overlooked when people are just thinking about getting a tan or avoiding a sunburn.
It's also interesting how public perception has shifted, or maybe hasn't shifted enough. You mentioned those tanned is beautiful campaigns from the past.
Indeed. It's a really powerful example of public perception clashing directly with scientific evidence. Back in the 1920s, there were active campaigns promoting tanning for health and vitamin D. This was despite the medical literature having cited UV radiation as a carcinogen since way back in the 1890s. It just highlights this long-standing tension, this disconnect in public perception that we're still grappling with today, trying to balance, as aesthetic desires with the health realities.
So all these facts, the benefits and the risks, it creates this massive public health puzzle, doesn't it? How do we promote enough sun exposure for adequate vitamin D synthesis without simultaneously increasing skin cancer risk? It feels like a really tough tightrope to walk.
It is a significant challenge. No easy answers. Public health guidelines that strongly advocate for sun avoidance while well-intentioned for cancer prevention can inadvertently lead to widespread hypovitaminosis D, low vitamin D levels. It creates this difficult balancing act. Take sunscreen, for example. It's a perfect illustration. While sunscreen is absolutely effective at protecting against skin cancer and photoaging, studies consistently show it only minimally lowers vitamin D production. That might surprise people. Regular sunscreen users are generally not found to be vitamin D deficient. Even with a properly applied high SPF sunscreen, about 15.6%, maybe more, of UV radiation still penetrates the skin.
But wait, I feel like I've heard so many people say sunscreen blocks all vitamin D production.
Exactly.
So that's just a misconception that it really sounds like there's a huge disconnect between what people believe and what the science actually says about sunscreen and vitamin D.
There is a major disconnect, yes. And part of the issue, maybe the biggest part in the real world, is the application gap. Here's the shocking truth about sunscreen for most people. Because of how we actually apply it, your SPF 30 might only be performing like an SPF 15 or even lower. Most individuals apply significantly less sunscreen than the amount used in testing labs to determine the SPF number. We're talking maybe 0.79 grams per square centimeter in reality, compared to the recommended 2 grams per square centimeter. That's less than half. This means the effective SPF you're getting in real-world situations can be as low as 50% of the value printed on the bottle, sometimes even less.
Wow. It really makes you think about how many times you've probably just, slapped on some sunscreen quickly and thought, okay, good enough.
Yeah.
Without realizing just how much of a difference the amount and thoroughness of the application makes. So the takeaway isn't that sunscreen completely blocks vitamin D. It's more that we're often not using it correctly, but even when we do use it properly, some UV still gets through, and that little bit can be enough to stimulate vitamin D production over time.
Precisely. You've got it. And studies actually show it's entirely possible to increase your vitamin D levels while using sunscreen, and crucially, avoiding sunburn, especially if you use sunscreens with high UVA protection as well. It's about smart sunscreening, not total sun avoidance or improper use. But the public's perspective is another huge hurdle. Think about campaigns like the UK's SunSmart program. They really struggled against the strong cultural desire to tan, particularly among adolescents, and that persistent incorrect belief that you need to get a sunburn first in order to get a tan later. It's a behavioral challenge just as much as it is a scientific communication challenge.
Okay, so if getting the right amount of sun exposure is so tricky, what about supplementation? Taking vitamin D pills, is that a reliable alternative?
It definitely can be. Vitamin D supplements, particularly vitamin D3, which studies show is generally more effective than D2, are a safe and effective way to increase your serum levels, though it's perhaps not as rapid, or some argue quite as physiologically natural as getting it from sunlight, but it works. Supplementation up to 4,000 international units, or IU daily, is considered safe for most adults. The official upper limit is generally set around 10,000 IU daily for overall vitamin D intake from all sources. And it's really important to note this. Toxicity from UV exposure is extremely rare. Your body has feedback loops, it self-regulates, and simply stops making vitamin D when it's had enough sun. But hypervitaminosis D, getting too much vitamin D, where levels exceed maybe 100 ml, can occur from taking excessive amounts of oral supplements. So moderation is key there.
That's a really crucial distinction. The body regulates sun-made D but not supplement D in the same way. So what's the general recommended dosage for supplements then, if someone is listening and thinking about prevention or maybe treating an existing deficiency?
Well, for general prevention in healthy adults, those under 65 are generally advised to aim for around 400 to 800 IUs per day. For those 65 and older, the recommendation is often a bit higher, maybe 800 to 1,000 IU daily, partly due to that reduced skin synthesis we mentioned. Now, for treating a known deficiency, the specific guidelines really vary based on how severe the deficiency is and individual risk factors. It typically involves much higher initial doses for a period sometimes called loading doses, followed by a lower maintenance dose to keep levels optimal. That really needs guidance from a healthcare professional.
Okay, so given all these complexities, the benefits, the risks, the challenges with sunscreen application, the option of supplements, how is technology stepping in to help us navigate this really tricky terrain? Let's bring it back to tools like wearable UV trackers. How are they empowering us potentially to make smarter sun choices day to day?
Yeah, they represent a potentially significant advancement because they offer real-time personalized UV exposure data right there on your wrist or clipped to your shirt. This empowers you, the individual, to make informed decisions by giving you immediate feedback that's relevant to your specific skin and your current situation that day. We're seeing two main types emerging now. There are simpler standalone devices that just give you a UV reading, and then there are the more sophisticated sensor app integrated systems. These leverage your smartphone's capabilities. They offer a much more tailored experience, factoring in your skin type, the SPF of the sunscreen you told it you applied, and even pulling in local weather conditions automatically.
So they're getting much smarter about our individual needs, moving way beyond just a generic UV index forecast for the whole city.
Exactly. And that includes what some are calling smart sunscreen integration.
I hate that.
These more advanced trackers can even attempt to account for those real-world sunscreen application imperfections we talked about earlier. And they can provide smart reminders for reapplication, maybe even based on your activity levels, like if you've been sweating or swimming, and integrating the UV forecast for the rest of the day. They're designed ideally to be a true personal sun safety assistant.
That sounds potentially very useful, but to really integrate into daily life, what are the critical design elements for these kinds of devices? What makes them truly useful and something people will actually wear every day?
That's a great point. For widespread adoption, user experience is everything. They absolutely need to be discreet. People don't want something bulky or obvious. Secure, definitely waterproof, lightweight, and critically, they need long-lasting power. Ideally, maybe even solar-powered, which would close the loop beautifully on using the sun's energy to manage sun exposure, right? Optimal placement is also key for getting accurate readings. Often, placing the sensor near the head, maybe on the face, collar, or a hat, is best because those areas often gauge the upper limit of your UV exposure throughout the day.
So the promise here really is about enabling more informed and, sun-savvy living, making these complex decisions maybe a little bit simpler for us in our busy lives.
Precisely. Ultimately, the success of these devices hinges on truly user-centric design. They need to deliver meaningful, actionable data without adding more complexity to your life. The goal is pushing towards a more informed and sun-savvy society where we can truly strike that difficult but necessary balance between benefit and risk.
Wow, what a deep dive that was into our really intricate and kind of complicated relationship with the sun. We've explored the essential, undeniable benefits, especially when it comes to vitamin D, and also faced the significant undeniable risks of UV exposure, like skin cancer and premature aging. It's just so clear that achieving optimal health in this context is such a nuanced challenge. It's not a simple choice, is it? And it's definitely a conversation we all need to be having probably more often.
Absolutely. And as we move forward thinking about tools like Jack Dorsey's Sunday app, they really reflect this growing trend in personalized digital wellness, don't they? It really makes you wonder, what does it mean?